I'm Camille.
I'm Rachel.
And on this week's episode of Food Science for Thanksgiving, we'll be dispelling a couple popular myths. Welcome to Food Science, a show where we talk about the ingredients and the processes that go into making the delicious foods that we all know and love. This week's episode, we're actually taking a slightly different take on things. So instead of explaining the science behind a particular recipe and then making that recipe for you, we're just going to be talking in general about a couple of myths that I'm sure we have all heard around this time of year, specifically about turkey and tryptophan, and then we'll be talking about cranberries and UTIs. Rachel, did you want to start us off and tell us a little bit about turkey and tryptophan and why that might not actually make you sleepy?
Spoiler alert. So anyways, first, we're starting off by talking about some turkey. The common misconception or myth around turkey is that it creates this, or it has this amino acid in it called tryptophan that makes you fall asleep. In order to understand this theory, we need to understand, first of all, what tryptophan is. Now, tryptophan is an amino acid, which, as every bio teacher has ever told me, is the essential building block for life. Amino acids are just your body's way of converting DNA into proteins. It uses these amino acids, and so there are the non-essential amino acids, which you already have in your body, but you also need the essential amino acid, which your body does not make, and tryptophan is one of these. And the way that this tryptophan works in your body is when you consume it, it then wiggles its way through your bloodstream up to your brain, and then once it's in your brain, it's converted to serotonin and then to melatonin, and melatonin is a very commonly known neurotransmitter that actually helps you sleep.
Right, they have like those melatonin pills where
Exactly.
you take them if you're having trouble. It's like a natural remedy, it's supposed to help you sleep better.
Exactly, because it's already in your body, so all that melatonin is just giving you a little bit more of it.
Okay, so like from this point, it makes sense, right? Turkey's got tryptophan, it's converted to melatonin in the brain, it makes you sleepy. So why isn't that the case?
So there are a couple different sort of flaws in this theory. The first being that on this pathway from the bloodstream to the brain, it has to sort of encounter the blood-brain barrier. Basically, it's kind of like a gate in between your bloodstream and your brain. Keeps all the toxins out. It also helps to control what compounds are coming into the brain. And so with tryptophan making its way up to your brain, it's competing with a lot of other like amino acids and proteins to get into the brain as well. And so it's kind of unlikely that consuming that tryptophan is going to have it be powerful enough or strong enough in your brain in order to elicit this sleeping. The other more sort of clear flaw in this theory is the fact that the amount of tryptophan in turkey is really not that high. It's actually lower than the amount of tryptophan in things like chicken and like cheese. And so if this were true, that tryptophan is making you sleepy, anytime you ate something like chicken or ate anything with cheese in it, you would feel just as sleepy, and that's just not true, and we don't really see that happening.
Okay, so basically tryptophan is competing with other things to get in the brain.
Yeah.
So you're not getting like an incredible amount of it, and turkey doesn't even have that much.
Exactly. So, yeah.
Okay, so that makes sense. But then what is happening when you eat a big Thanksgiving meal and then feel like you need to sleep forever afterwards?
One theory about how eating this turkey might be affecting your sleepiness is that at the same time we're eating a lot of turkey at Thanksgiving, we're also eating a lot of carbohydrates. You got the stuffing, you've got mashed potatoes, you've got sweet potatoes, you've got biscuits. So at the same time, we're consuming a lot of carbohydrates, and carbohydrates elicit an insulin action that helps to remove a lot of the competition at the blood-brain barrier. So some people's theory is that because you're eating this tryptophan turkey in combination with carbohydrates, there's actually a lot less competition for the tryptophan, and it can get into the brain easier. The flaw I see with this, though, is, again, anytime you ate something high in tryptophan with carbohydrates, you'd get the same feeling. And when you're eating something like mac and cheese, that's high in tryptophan, and obviously pasta's got a lot of carbs, you're not having that really sleepy result after Thanksgiving. And so the other possible theories that are sort of more heavily supported is, first of all, people drink a lot of alcohol around Thanksgiving, and alcohol makes you sleepy. Second of all, it's really just the mass amount of food that you're consuming. When you eat that, like this huge quantity of food, it forces your body to sort of expend a lot of energy digesting it. And when you do that, you sort of edge your body over into sort of what we call this rest and digest state.
So you literally eat so much you can do nothing except just process what you have eaten. That's kind of scary. That's kind of sad.
We do it every year.
Now that we've debunked the tryptophan rumor, we're going to talk a little bit about an equally exciting topic, which would be cranberries and UTIs.
Everybody has heard about cranberries helping prevent UTIs.
Yeah, or some people even say that if you have a UTI and you drink a lot of cranberry juice, you take those little concentrated cranberry pills, it can somehow help it to resolve itself more quickly. So first of all, cranberries said to be helpful for UTIs because they make your urine more acidic.
This is an interesting idea because cranberry juice is very acidic. If this were true, it would, any juice would make your pee more acidic, right? So, like orange juice, apple juice, and it's also really not changing the acidity of your pee that much. So, and the idea behind this is that more acidic pee would be inhospitable to this bacteria.
Okay, yeah. So since that doesn't make sense, people have proposed this other theory that while it is somewhat effective or like somewhat explains cranberry juice's effect, we're not really sure what's going on. So there's some component in cranberry juice that makes it difficult for bacteria to bind to the walls of the urethra.
Exactly.
So this is what's actually happening. It is why cranberry juice is effective, but not in treating UTIs. See, there's the rub, because really cranberry juice is only going to help prevent them. Specifically, if you're someone who gets recurring UTIs, your doctor might tell you to drink cranberry juice and not that like ocean spray, sugar added stuff. You would want to drink pure actual cranberry juice or take the pills to get the positive benefits from it. But if you are already suffering from a UTI, the juice is not going to help you. It actually could hurt you by making your urine slightly more acidic and causing you discomfort when you have to go to the bathroom, which just sounds unpleasant. Long story short, cranberries, though not a treatment by any means for UTIs, can be a helpful preventative if it's something you suffer from a lot.
In conclusion, now that we've discussed two very common Thanksgiving myths, turkey doesn't actually really make you sleepy, although eating all of that food does, and while you're enjoying eating massive amounts of food at Thanksgiving, you might also be helping prevent your chance of getting some UTIs if you eat some cranberries.
With that said, even though today's episode wasn't focusing on the science behind a specific recipe, because it's Thanksgiving and everyone is making a lot of delicious things, we are going to be doing that for you guys as well. I'm going to be making a pecan pie. The recipe will be in the description, and let's get started with that. Started with our pie dough. To make the crust, first we're going to add the flour and the salt and sugar and whisk them together. Now, for those of you who watched last week's episode, these first couple steps will be familiar. We are doing the same basic process, first combining our dry ingredients. Once those are thoroughly mixed, we are going to add the fat. However, unlike with biscuits, this fat is actually just going to be added by hand, and instead of the shortening, we are using butter. Okay, ooh, that's nice. Okay, so once your butter is in there, you're actually just going to take it and kind of try to combine it with your flour, break up the butter into slightly smaller pieces. About the size of beans is what the recipe I'm using suggested, and you want the flour to sort of look like cornmeal by the time that you're done this. Once you've gotten the butter broken down and you have made an absolute mess of yourself, as I have, it's going to look a little bit like that. Like I said, about bean-sized for the bits of butter, and then we are going to add a liquid ingredient to bind the dough together. The liquid this time, instead of using milk, is actually just an egg. It's already been lightly beaten, so we're just going to pour it in to our dough, and then you can mix that either by hand or, if you want to save yourself a little mess, with a fork. It's important to note that if your butter gets too warm while you're doing this, the recipe won't turn out. You'll just have melted butter in your dough, which is not what we want. If that starts to happen, pop the entire mixture into the fridge for about 10 minutes before you go on. Okay. Once it's all pretty evenly coated, you're going to form this kind of eggy, floury mess into a ball, and then you're gonna be covering it in plastic wrap and refrigerating it for about 10 10 minutes before we go any further. So now that the dough is chilled, it's ready to be rolled out. You're going to want to work on a lightly floured surface. You're also going to want to flour your rolling pin, or in a pinch, you can use any glass bottle as well. Things that I have learned from experience. Okay, and then we're going to roll our dough out into a circle about 12 inches in diameter. As a note, for this, my dough had actually turned out too wet. If that happens, feel free to just add a little flour until it's the consistency that you need so it's not sticky. And here we have your pie crust. I've rolled it out. I've pressed it into the tin here and then given it a little ridge by folding the excess underneath and then just pinching around the sides like this. Doesn't need to be anything too fancy. So now that this is taken care of, you're actually going to freeze this for about half an hour before you bake it. But in the meantime, let's get started on our filling. So to a medium-sized bowl, you're going to add 3 eggs. And you're going to beat these eggs until they are light and fluffy. You can see the whisk is helping to incorporate air into the eggs. You really want to get them so they're foamy. So if you're doing this by hand, it might take a while. You could also use a hand beater or even a stand mixer if you were feeling up to that. Once your eggs have formed lots of tiny little air bubbles like this, you're going to add in your brown sugar, white sugar, and flour. And just combine that. Now, an important thing to note is that when you're measuring out brown sugar, most recipes are going to call for you to have that packed really tightly, which is why the sugar was holding the shape of the container that it was in before. Now that's the opposite of what you would do with flour. With flour, you're going to want to make sure that you don't pack it down at all because that can really affect your recipe. Here, the flour is more just like a thickening agent, so it's not too important. But for other recipes where it's, one of the main ingredients, definitely matters. Okay, so once that sugar has been mainly broken down in there and it's all combined with the eggs, I'm going to add coconut oil. Now, although I went with a more traditional crust using butter, I did want to do a slightly healthier filling, so that is why we're substituting that. Typical pecan pie would use corn syrup, but this acts as a great substitute for it and makes it a lot lighter in contrast with that heavier crust. Okay, then next to the mixture, I'm going to be adding some milk, a little bit of vanilla, and I also put a splash of bourbon in there, because who doesn't want a little booze in their holiday dessert? You are going to add about a cup of pecans to the mix. Now these I just kind of roughly chopped. They will still cook up just fine if you've got some bigger chunks still in there. Okay, and then once the pecans are all coated in your sugar egg mixture, you are done making your filling. You can chill this until your pie is ready to go in the oven. What's going to happen next is that we're going to bake the pie for a little bit beforehand so that it sets up before we add the filling to it. That's really important so that the bottom of your pie doesn't end up all floppy and soupy and sad and unable to be cut and served to your guests. Thank you guys so much for watching our second episode, our Thanksgiving episode of Food Science. If you like the video, like it. If you have any ideas for shows we should do in the future, whether they be in this format or in the first episode format where we're doing a recipe, let us know down below in the comments.
And if you like us enough, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and don't forget to subscribe for plenty more of food science fun
In the future. Yep. Thanks, guys, so much. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving!
Patch says Happy Thanksgiving too, just in a really angry way.
Down she goes.